before July of '93.
So, no, I was just disappointed in what things, it'd give everybody, all those, the 2,000 for some reason, they'd get to here, and they would, there's no way.
Okay. Yeah.
Who's going to replace all those people?
They're not.
That's what they want. They want a license. Anyone can teach. Get rid of their license.
Did you see, and I put it on
Sure.
my Facebook page, and I should
The student documentary?
put it on Twitter, there was a thing in the Topeka paper about the kid from Lewisburg, 16-year-old kid that made it's like an hour documentary, almost a film. It's called...
Where the Buffalo,
Where the Buffalo Roam.
Oh,
the story of
name?
the Kansas budget. Tanner,
Is it on YouTube?
yeah, it's on,
Yeah.
he just posted it on YouTube
there's
on
a
Saturday.
16-year-old kid
It's
on
worth
that.
watching.
There's a podcast that comes out of Kansas City, and it's called State House Blend, and they have a different representative on each week. And there was a 16-year-old kid on that asking questions about stuff, and because he said, well, I'm just a 16-year-old kid, but, and so he was asking about some stuff. I thought, I wonder if it's the same kid.
Could be.
Why else would they invite a 16-year-old kid to be on a
Yeah, I bet
podcast?
it is. But he was pretty strong.
He had extraordinary access to some very interesting,
Dave Traver.
well, and then former
I didn't
Speaker of the
realize
House,
that little,
granted from the 1980s.
that
but
little
still.
presidential information
Lawrence
gal that
Economist.
was on the Ellen Show. I didn't realize she was from Kansas.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't know she was from Kansas
Yeah.
until just recently. Yeah, that's my, yeah.
That's what I'll have to look in. That's where the, yeah, those are, because we see the Veterans Day.
That is,
We all have.
that's so nice.
That's a packet of all of it, isn't it?
No, but she hasn't broke out.
Actually, it probably should have been ours.
What's this? Oh.
Oh, this is what's in our contract.
Okay, is this what you're giving us? This
Yeah.
is our
I just started
proposal.
passing it
Is
around
this
there.
just one, or is this?
I have the other ones here too. We're just going through and getting the rest of them here filled.
Okay.
Sorted out.
Okay, do we have a long fix here? Okay.
Oh, this is what the proposal is, isn't it? Because we don't have 186 days, do we?
We have 179 total. You know, I looked at our old contracts, in fact, I think I still one in my bag. I looked back to find, you know,
Just all this stuff. Said it 2 days. She said
here, the last one I could find that had the statements in it. Here.
Are these actually separated out, or are these all just part of these?
Just
That's fine.
Okay, so here's one. I stated it more clearly. We used to have this more. This is a nice,
That's fine.
this is a nice format right here. That we had, this is the requirement. This is what we have towards that requirement, and that these things counted. So,
you see, they're still fighting. the images that we did.
Yeah. Yep, we're all here, so we can go ahead and begin.
Let's start.
Right, I'll go ahead and call the KNEA 49 Board of Education Negotiations meeting to order for Tuesday, April 28, 2015.
And I just want to reiterate that even though we have a quorum of board members here, it is a negotiation session and not a board meeting, and that it falls under the Professional Negotiations Act, which is still an open meeting.
For us, it's both. It has to be.
My understanding is you are a subcommittee of the board
But if the
when you
board-
are meeting in this
If the board's
juncture.
going to discuss any issues, then
But
It
you're
has to
not
be an
coming-
open meeting, but it's
Right.
not a board meeting.
it's noticed as a board meeting.
Shouldn't they be negotiation sessions?
Because you're not making any
Notice to me.
decisions here,
But we are if we go to executive session.
but you're going to caucus, not an executive session.
But we can't go caucus with more than 3 board members without violating the Open Meetings Act.
But see, you fall under the Opens Meeting Act for professional negotiations.
Right, but I don't want to go have an open meeting discussion about our negotiating position.
But when you go to
That defeats
a
the
caucus,
purpose.
both parties go out, regardless of how many you have here.
Right, but if we have, no more than 3 board members can get together and discuss something without violating the Open
In a
Meetings Act.
caucus?
Doesn't matter what you call it. I can call it by email, I can call it having drinks at the bar. It's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So,
Historically, we never have been.
We've had 4 here before, and we've called a caucus.
We've had all of them here before.
we've
Yeah.
never gone to a caucus with more than 3 board members, ever.
Oh, I can remember that one time we did.
Well-
We talked about the Hayes High schedule when we were in this room.
And you guys went upstairs?
You guys all went upstairs.
There was
we all
3
went over
board
there.
members, and there was there was more than 4 of us, or more than 3 of us, but there was only 3 board members.
I think all of you, I think I passed out, all of you should have the first one there, the Article 2, hours and amount of work. That was just the first portion of that was passed out there. We just figured we'd start with that one and kind of work our way through.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you guys want to go through with that. I mean, the important points are that we are presenting an additional 7 days to the calendar, that the breakout of that would be 1 through 4. The current contract, I think, is confusing as well. You have different contract days that count as student-teacher days, but yet, so many in-service days count as that. Well, why don't we just have student-teacher days be student-teacher days and the others be those days and allocate those accordingly, and that's what we've done. So you'd have 172 student-teacher contact days. There'd be 5 days for work when students are not in attendance, 5 for professional employee in-service, and 4 parent-teachers. And that's, the parent-teachers represents the 2 extra. We've had a lot of concerns from parents about the lack of a spring parent-teacher conferences.
So you want to add, you're interested in adding the conference days back in. You're interested in adding
So-
1 more day of professional in-service?
So basically, if you start at option number 2, that basically goes from 3 to 5.
Yeah,
Number 2,
And then you want to add
3
2.
goes from 4 to 5.
3 goes from 4 to 5.
Number 2, these are the work days?
Correct.
5 days for work, so those would be not meetings or anything, those would be for days for,
Yeah, so you'd go from 3 of those to 5, I think is the numbers.
I believe so.
And then number 1, I believe is it 169, Dean? The current?
That's right.
Yeah. So it's-
currently on the work days, we have the January work day, we have the 2
2.
half-days, and we have the floating day. So we have
And that's why I
3
said 3 to 5.
3,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, we have 3. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that's what we have, okay.
And 4 is 2 goes from 2 to 4.
Okay.
And then the next section.
And then the teacher-student contact days, is that 2 more? You're saying that's
3
2
more.
more?
Three more. I think you guys are at 169 now.
169, 172.
Plus 3? Okay.
So there's not going to be any of the, like on the previous one, you had the in-service days, there was 4, but 2 of them counted as or 2 student contact days could count as in-service, and that just won't, it's just going to be, here's what student contact is, here's what in-service is, and
Well, isn't that,
No overlap.
when we say that those count, that's what the state recognizes. It's not like that's what the state recognizes, right?
I understand that, but I think
Okay.
what we're saying is let's
You
just
don't
make them
recognize
clear
it.
cut that these are going to be these days, these are going to be these days, and
But the
And that's
state will
8
still
days.
recognize
what's
that.
that?
That's 8 days.
So-
When we figure the calendar, it'll,
7.
in-service will count a half.
3
So we
for
have-
1, 2 for 2,
PTC will count
1
as
for
full.
3,
The same
and
thing.
2 for 4. Whoops.
So you'd have 172
3, 4, 5.
teaching days,
You'd have
Six.
I would
186
count-
total days, which would be 7 days.
but counting towards the state, we would have 4. The parent-teacher days count as full,
How
right?
come I count 8 when
I know what you're saying, but
because there's 3 at number
And then the
1.
in-service
You're increasing it to 2
Would be
at
two and a
number
half?
2.
Correct.
work
1,
days don't
and
count
then
at all.
2. That totals 8.
2.5. So
Why is that?
we're credit towards
it's
the
only
state
7
requirement.
more days, but I don't know where the difference
We have a
is, Kathy.
178.5.
But you're right, I agree with that, your number,
Yeah,
how you're counting is the
it's-
same as I do. but-
Oh, this is a weird.
What are you looking at?
This counts up, the additional days count up to 8, but when you go 10,
You go from
14,
179 to
that's
186,
186, that's only 7 days. So
I think we
where'd
have,
the
100
extra?
I think we have 172 now, 170. I think this is 2 extra teacher days.
Okay. That would-
Oh,
that would
okay.
make
I think
sense. That
we-
would
I
make
think
We
sense.
have
that's a plus, too.
170
It's
instead.
I think we have
169.
170. I think you're not adding 3, I think you're adding 2 on number 1,
Yeah, okay.
That would make sense.
I think. Okay. And tell us about the next part.
The next part, I think, is just trying to leave a little more flexibility. I think the only thing that really changes there is the winter break. Just allows the flexibility to have, and what we've looked at in other contracts, it looks similar in language to what most are doing. 10 days is about what we have now, or is what we have now. I don't know that we're going to go drop to 6, but it's, I think the goal is still to provide for travel time for everybody, not just teachers, but for students and
Greg,
families.
one thing that, and I didn't mean to interrupt, one thing that the high school has to worry about is coinciding with the college schedule,
Right.
because of concurrent billing and things like that. And, I mean, that is a factor.
Well, I think all those things will take into, I think those are part of the consideration, but, it just allows for the flexibility that we're not locked down to a 14-day Christmas vacation.
I just know that one year that we cut it short, the superintendent received many complaints from parents because they'd already booked their vacations a year in advance.
And I'm not aware of any intention to cut it short, but there is flexibility there to do that. And if it is cut short, it's one of the potential, you can hear it from everybody, teachers, parents, students. And it's, if you guys are ready, we can go to the next. I don't know that next paragraph really has a lot of substantial changes. I think that's pretty much what's there. The next section, we had, essentially the overall gist of it was to add 30 minutes to the school day. And the plan would be then that you would have the start time would be 40 minutes prior, and that 30 minutes after, and you'd have a 7.75 hour day. And I think, oh, you haven't handed those out yet?
I thought it was part of that.
There's a graph that we have that I think you guys may have seen that had where we were in relation to several other schools, and then this shows kind of with the proposal where we would end up.
What's the earliest start time next year of our schools? You know?
Well, I think 54, I think, isn't that what we talked about?
I think 7:54, I think.
Be 7:15.
So 40 minutes prior to that would be 7:14.
Now, there is a provision at the end that allows for the building principal to work with teachers to, if there's something that,
Like if they have children,
yeah, you got a
what are they
semester
gonna do
that
with
you
their
can't get
children?
the kids to school, or, or whatever the case may be, or that they can slide that to, maybe they come in at 20 minutes before but stay later.
and
And I think on the arrival and departure times, we've got them set, but I think that's an area that there's probably a lot more room for discussion as far as what the appropriate time would be. And as we talked about it, I think we looked at a lot of factors, daycare, dropping off at another school, those sorts of things that would factor in. And our focus on the 30 minutes is to try and have more plan time, or more collaboration time, and more student contact time, and get us kind of more into where others are at.
Could we back up and look at that graph on contract days?
On the
They
days?
have that before them.
We just have the hours.
Coming in.
unless it's on,
Was I supposed to hand this around?
oh, we don't have, we just have the hours.
Wait a second. Is that the-
I had it, I didn't send it around. Oh, there, just pass it the other direction, it'd be easier. I didn't get one of those.
I think there's two different packets.
No, did you? I have that.
Oh, okay.
That's What's the difference?
Did you send it?
Contact time per day.
What's the difference?
They might have this,
Is there a difference?
Contact days, teacher contact hours per day, and student
Contact time per day.
Which one don't?
I don't have the time.
Purple, green,
No, I've got
and
time, I don't have the green or the
I
other.
don't have a green one. I got two blue ones.
Here comes the green. Is there a blue one?
There's green.
I think you got it. Everybody got it.
Everybody's coming around with the rest.
So
of
you
them.
should have a time per day, contract days, and contact days.
Should be a total of 4 of them.
Four?
Either one.
Yes.
I want to see a graph of those two.
Okay. Purple, blue, green, and orange.
Yep.
Which one are you referring to?
Okay, so
Which one are you on?
back up to the first thing that we talked about, when we talked about contract year. I mean, this was kind of the graph that was driving our discussion.
which one are you wanting us to look at?
Sorry, the green.
The green.
Teacher contract days.
Right.
So, I mean, you can see that Hayes right now is in the lower quarter compared to all these other schools. And that's what was concerning to us. With our proposal, it moves us up into much higher on that graph.
And do you understand why we're down in that bottom
I
quartile?
do.
Now, would it,
But regardless of what's happened in the past, I want to focus on the here and now. And
But that,
we're sitting down there when all these other schools aren't. And we hear feedback that we feel teachers don't feel like they can get everything done that needs to be done.
I guess, Kathy, I think I know exactly what your answer to that was going to be, but it might be helpful to hear.
that many of these schools were giving substantial increases when we weren't. And that's when the administration agreed to lop off days, is because there was no money. And so they gave us increases by paying for our insurance and lopping off days.
But that impacts our students. So I
Well-
wish I could go back and.
Yeah, I'd like to know the hours, not just, I mean, and you may have that
That's
here.
on here.
And that
Yeah.
kind of goes into the next one. Right, that's right.
Because, I mean, if you look at the hours that we worked, when we worked in 182 days, were our
Yeah.
hours close to the same that we work
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
It was-
So when we worked
Yeah.
182 days, our hours are very
wasn't it?
comparable to what we work now in terms of contact time with students.
Wasn't it
And
183 at that
business-
point, not 82? I think we cut 2
We
days
had
in 2
182
years.
at one point.
No, I thought we cut 4 days out on 2, I thought we cut 2 days in 2 separate
Well, we used to be
contracts.
174, and we
This
cut
is
4 days.
From
It was like in 05 or
1997.
6 or somewhere around there.
1997.
1997, we had 182 days. So we have 3 less. And of those 3 days, 2 of them were the student teacher, or the conference days, which at the time we had that conversation, we had asked, you know, we have so many more means of communication now than we had in 1997. In 1997, you know, we didn't have Moodle, and we didn't have Power School, and we didn't have texting and email and all the ways we communicate with parents. And that was the reason we went with taking off those days, because we thought we're still sitting down in the auditorium for the same number of hours that we did in 1997, and we have all these means of communication, and we communicate and communicate. So we felt like those are days that we could take off and not hurt the kids, because we do communicate in so many more ways, where in 1997 we did not. We waited, and parents walked in, and we didn't have all that communication. So
And I-
that was the thought behind it.
Before we get too far from what Kathy said, this is just a timeline question, so I think you guys have this narrowed down pretty good. You said that the days were cut back because of lack of compensation.
Then, yeah, there was no money to give increases.
Then did compensation, when, like when the 5.5% and the 6% raises were added on, was that before or after the days were cut back?
I can answer that, because if you go from just looking at certified staff, which I think for the most part, everybody but administration always got the same raises every year, but in 95, 96, there was a 4% raise, 2.9 in 96, 97, 4% in 97, 98, 98, 99 was 3%, 99, 2000, 2.5, 2.5 the next year, 2.5 the next year, 5% in 02 and 03, 1.5 in 03 and 04, and I think that was the first year we took days out of the contract. And then the next year there was no raise, and I know we took days out that year. The following year there was 6%, then 5.5, then 2.5, 3.65, and then 9 and 10, 10 and 11 there was no raise. 11 and 12 there was 1.05, and 12 and 13 2.5.
And it's not just the student contact time, we're also hearing, you know, that teachers want more professional development, so we're trying to add that, you know, some days there. And
Okay.
then hearing from both, I've heard from both teachers and parents wanting those spring conferences back. So it was multiple factors, wanting to increase the calendar, but also looking at this disparity when we look at the others, you know, the other school districts.
And when I say, okay, you may have percentages, of course, we all know that one year it was $200 in all the cells. Another year it was $300 in all the cells. You know, $300 in 1 year equates to what, $35, $40 a month? And that was the raise. We've had 6 years where the people who are on the vertical movement have been frozen. I mean, nothing. And from what I understand, we've hired teachers this year who got all their 11 years. And so again, we're treating people who are coming in outside of the district better than our teachers who have stayed with us and are loyal. Because we're giving them the years, and then we have frozen our other teachers for 6 years. And I've made my comments before. When you hire people and you show them that salary schedule, that's a promise that you're going to move on the salary schedule. That's moving them from a beginning rookie to being a professional salary.
But we got to be careful. I mean, that's a promise for that year. I mean, that's all that. I mean, we have a 1-year contract, and so yes, that's where we start next year generally. But there is no. I mean, there's no guaranteed raise or performance bonus or anything like that outside of that 1 year. I mean, they're just either way.
But to freeze someone at the same salary for 6 years.
I'm not arguing about that
Yeah.
point, because I understand the inequities in that. If I've been here for 6 years and I'm still at step one, and somebody else comes in that's worked for 6 years in another district and they get more than I do, that's not fair. I understand that. And I think that's something we've addressed numerous times, and there's not a perfect way to fix that, but I think that's something, as a board, I think we're willing to look at and address, you know.
And when the 1.8% was given, not last year, but the year before, how was that distributed?
It was like $300 in the salary
It's
scale.
$264 a cell.
Yeah.
That was
It was
it.
based off of the
But-
idea of trying to keep up with inflation, because we saw other social services having their payments increase, like Social Security and those types of payouts, because we realized that
Well,
we were trying to come up with that percentage figure.
Every year except for that year, when we've given raises, you guys got to pick where they went. I'm not aware, in my 12 years, that I'm not aware of any time we said, here's where it's going to go. I know that there were some years we did have to focus on the introductory wage, because we had gotten, in prior years, when it had been placed elsewhere, it made that number had stayed so low that it was making it difficult to get that first-year teacher. So we did have to fix that. But other than that, you guys have got to allocate where the money went. We gave the percentage.
And we allocated where the people are.
Well,
Right, and I'm not being critical, but I just want to make sure that we all are aware that we haven't had, we've been very standoffish on where the money went in the cells, except for that 1 year.
No, 2 years, because 1 year we did 200 in a cell, and the year before, or 2 years before we did the big year, when you got 6% from the state, we put $100 in the cells. There was one year.
There would have been some other raises in addition to that, but it might have been.
But there were a couple of years when Mark was here, and we only did $100 in a cell and $200 in a cell. But
That could have been, I mean, I just know that when I was here, and I'm not going to stake my word on it, but the only one I remember is the 264. There could have been others, but I'm not aware of any.
the what?
And I know a lot.
Where we dictated where the money went, so.
Many of our teachers would also ask, though, when you look at this chart with the contract days, how are our kids doing in terms of academically against other schools? Are we performing higher than them? Are we performing along with them, averaging with them?
Is that easy enough to get overlay with this graph? Average ACT, I don't know what
ACT and assessments.
ACT and
I
assessment.
don't know about the ACT, but the assessments is all out there.
And regarding the percentages that were stated, you know, when we say a 5% or a 6% raise, that does not mean that everybody got a 5 or a 6% raise. A lot of that is funding for
Well,
educational advancement, which is the industry standard.
But
And
that
if you're-
would have been total raises for all
I
teachers.
understand that, but I don't know that everybody
For all certified
understands
staff.
that. And I think that implies that, oh, you teachers have been getting these 5% raises, 6% raises, 3% raises. And in actuality, there are people that are getting very little raises, and it's not keeping up with inflation. If you would take our salaries and plug them in to an inflation calculator, we're way behind from 14 years ago or 12 years ago. So yes, we're moving people up through the steps, or we're moving them with their education, which they paid for themselves, as you pointed out. So you're getting a better, you're getting a more educated teacher.
I don't have the numbers from last year, but that one, I went on this spreadsheet I got, and we created it 2 years ago. It's a little outdated, but I went and looked at the Consumer Price Index and, the CPI and the BLS CPI, and the CPI is 45.6% over that was the total percentage of increase, and it was 44.3 on the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And our certified staff got 49.1 over that same period of time. So we are ahead of the inflation.
Wait, you're saying the salary schedule was fed.
Right.
I'm saying we put 49.1% additional dollars into certified staff salaries during that time.
What
period.
I'm saying is that an individual teacher's salary is not keeping up with inflation. If you're looking at that cell of the career
But-
teacher, they're not keeping up with inflation. Because
But how, I mean, I understand where you're coming from on that, but we've allowed you guys to put it into the box.
So you don't
and-
want to use a salary schedule? Is that what,
No,
that's the
but-
industry standard.
But what you're telling us is that we said, put it into the box and put it where it goes, and now you're saying, well, yeah, we did that, but we didn't put it into all the boxes fairly, and so others are now falling behind, and that's your fault.
No, I'm not. I'm saying we're honoring people's education and their advanced experience, and you're saying that's your choice, not ours.
No, and that's one of the steps in the box, but I mean, the problem is, and I think maybe the flaw is that we should just divide it equally amongst all the boxes in the future, because then we don't have this debate, because then everybody gets raised at the same level.
I don't think- I don't see-
If
I don't see
you
people
look at the
accepting that.
salary spreadsheet that we've used in the past, and we put in the top, or where we want to target the money, the disparity between the low and the top is less than 1%. Maybe it's 0.4 sometimes. There's not a huge, we try to keep a balance between the low and the high end. And that spreadsheet we use demonstrates, and it tells me where it's at, because we don't want one teacher getting a huge increase while another one is sitting there stuck. I mean, we try to make sure it's equal, but the money follows the teachers. That's why you have to put the money in different cells, because as the teachers move over horizontally when they get to, or move vertically when they get to, you got to take that money and you got to follow the teachers. Otherwise, it's wasted money in a cell.
But unless we give raises on a per-teacher basis, the percentage is never going to be the same for everybody.
Correct.
You just can't.
Right.
And you might have, I mean, over that same
But
time
our
period,
goal
somebody
is
could
to-
have got 20% pay raise.
Excuse me,
and-
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
The goal, though, is to get everybody to that career salary, which is 12 steps, right? Or 11?
We have
11.
12, are we 12?
It's 11, isn't
I
it?
think it's 11.
It's 11. You know, so our goal is to get everybody moved to that top level so that everyone's at a career salary. And then you plug in money in that career salary to keep up with inflation.
I guess that's where I would be confused right now. If based on that spreadsheet, we're a little over 6% above the inflation rate, but from the top to the bottom, we're around 1% difference. Maybe I'm just missing something. Otherwise, I would say everybody should have been above and not falling behind the inflation standard, just based on those numbers there. So I'm confused on this, but.
Well, I mean, when you're stuck at the top, when you've reached the career salary, if we put the money in not the PhD level, but we use it at the master's plus 45, okay? If we use that one, then those people at the top are not going to see necessarily the rate of inflation, because all the money's going to trickle down, it's going to go more in those lower cells.
You have to use some of that money to help fund movement, like say somebody gets their master's degree, and we acknowledge that
That's
through a
at
raise.
$1,800? That's an $1,800 increase when they move from that column to the next column, and we've got a plan for that.
But I think the drawback to that, though, is and I don't have the sheet from KSB this year, but, I mean, that's one of the reasons that when you look at where you guys score on a 20-year average, the numbers are so high. I think the last one we had from last year, our teachers on a 20-year average were number 10 in the state out of 286 districts, which puts you in the top 3.65% for pay over 20-year average.
But that's because our teachers are so old.
Well,
very
no,
educated.
it doesn't, this doesn't have to
Very
do,
educated.
this has nothing to do with where our teachers are. This is based on a 20-year average where you would be. And now, we'd score differently when you look at average teacher pay and starting teacher pay. But on the 20-year average, that's where we're at. But we have 11 steps to get to the top. You guys get to the top quicker than anybody else. The problem is when you get to the top, what's that?
Not if we don't honor those steps.
Well, right, but I'm just saying,
Good point.
on anybody
Well, your
else's.
20-year average is completely blown out of the water then.
Right.
Right, but I would say we're probably not a whole lot different than most other districts that are freezing on horizontal and vertical movement.
A lot of other districts that you have mentioned here have it to where it's actually written into their contract that says that a vertical movement is based off of a positive evaluation, and that step will be granted.
Okay. The difficulty for us is where would we bring that money from? We just don't, we don't have it. And so you're going to have to, we could lay off more teachers or other staff to get there, but that's the only way you're going to make it is, or start cutting programs. And, those are going to affect staff too. So, but, when we have 11 steps and Blue Valley has 28, that's a big difference. And so, most other jobs, when you get to the top of your job, there's a pay range. You're going to get from this amount to this amount. And when you get to the top, you just don't get raises.
Only inflation, cost of living.
You change most of them don't even have cost of living until they go back and adjust the cell.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, that's where,
Right.
that's the drawback to getting to the top so quick is you get frozen quicker.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also making the top end money quicker, and that's how you get.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the 10-year or the 20-year average looks better. Now, you're right. If you go and look at it and say, well, but 4 out of those 20 years you were frozen or 6 or whatever, then that number's going to change. But
Okay. All right. So where were we going over? We were going over this. We're going over the schedule.
I think we're going just over the teacher contract days on that green chart to just show that we would be moving from the lower quarter to third to moving over to the 186, which would put us.
Was there any particular reason as to why this scale was chosen the way that it was into making it look the way that it does? Because that's one nice thing about bar graphs that you can do is to be able
Any chart.
to be able to make it look at that. But the range from 195 to 165, and I understand that the low that you provide on the teacher contract days is 175 and we're 190 at. It makes it look.
I don't think there was any.
I don't think it's about deception, but I just wanted to know as to what if there was any particular reasoning for the range.
If there is, I'm not aware of it. So.
Okay. In trying to digest all 4 of these, just looking at, let's say, Bueller, for instance, I know that they're on the low end and maybe we don't want to use what they have as numbers all that well, but for their teacher contract hours, they have 6.83, but that's also their exact student contact time per day is 6.83. So are we, should we be under the assumption that those teachers have to get there when the bell rings just like the students do?
I don't know.
I'm just kind of, where did the information come from?
That came from their contracts.
From their contracts.
And I didn't put that together, so.
And then another one here too is to look at, in some instances, when you put all 4 graphs together, that definitely makes a lot more sense in looking at the idea that when we start comparing ourselves to one school on one graph, it's completely understandable as to why it's the exact opposite on a different graph. I'm just looking at Smoky Valley.
Which graph are you looking at?
Well, the
Color.
I know, I'm trying to figure that out.
Blue or purple? Purple.
It might be the purple.
They all have.
But it was one in which it seemed as though maybe even that the reason why their contract hours are high is because their contact days are low. Student contact days in Smoky Valley are 165, but yet their contact time is in the top third of that of your graph. Same thing goes with the teacher contract hours. They're working the longest, but they also have the shortest contact days in their contract. So, into comparing those numbers in that regard, I love the fact that we have all the same schools on the chart, but as to where the blue arrow for the Hayes proposal is to understanding, I guess necessarily, where is it that you feel like it's best for Hayes to be on this chart? In the middle on every single one?
I think if we were at the top, it would be best for our students. That's the rub, is how do we do a balance between the best for the students and reasonable for the teachers.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, you can see that in the case of Smoky Valley and a couple of the others. But how does that explain ours? I mean, I don't think, we're not flip-flopping on the ground, right?
That's right.
I mean,
We're staying pretty consistent and steady.
You know, less days and then more hours, okay, they're working fewer days but longer hours, right? But in our case, we're bottom on both ends.
But when you look at the 6.53, does that count the fact that we have voted at the high school, and now next year with the elementary, we have voted to shift contact with contract time? That we have, at the high school alone, we have 14 minutes per day that we've added for contact time. Does this reflect that 14 minutes? Because we gave up 14 minutes of our prep time before and after school to give to student contact time. So does this reflect that?
The high schools were what I used as a gathering to keep it the same across the board because I felt that we used others would be skewed. So the numbers that were gotten from the agreements were.
And so you're saying the 6.53 includes the 15 minutes per day that the high school does?
That's what was in the handbook.
We'll probably need to do some homework.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll definitely need to just look into them and do some homework ourselves.
And I think the intent on a lot of this is just to try to get the information out, as we said, just as a starting point.
Yeah.
So,
Well, in a way, it also, it helps us in understanding as to like whose contracts that are being exempt. I mean, to understand that this is the pool of schools that,
And I don't know if it's only those, I think it is, but,
it's a pretty good comprehensive list.
Well, we-
It's not comprehensive, but it's.
But I still say you need to be careful using,
Yeah, it is.
you still need to be careful using McPherson, Concordia, and it's not Hugoton, is it? Who are innovative
the
Blue
schools?
Valley is the innovative school, McPherson is the innovative school.
Yeah, you need to be careful with the innovative schools because all laws are thrown out with them. They can do whatever they want.
I know they can do what they want, but I mean, it doesn't, yeah, I mean, it's, that's who we're competing with, right? On a 4 and 5A level, that's what we looked at, and then, you know, Blue Valley and Shawnee Mission, we're not really competing with, but I think they're kind of ones that are
We
at the
strive
top.
to
that
be
you-
just as.
Yeah. So that's
We
why
may
they're
not be
at, yeah.
competing with them in sports, but I think you are competing with them when you're looking to hire teachers. If you have a young college kid and you're trying to convince them to stay in Hayes and commit their, you know, just last week, we had our service awards and we had a whole line of teachers up there that have committed their career to this town. And so you're asking kids to do that. You're saying, hey, you know, we want to hire you and we want you to be that professional teacher here. And so you are competing with those towns. You've got to convince them to stay in Hayes and not move to Kansas City.
But we can't, I mean, you can't get carried away on that because, I mean, we all know people that move away and whether it be friends or employees or children or whatever.
Right.
Oftentimes, the reason they're moving has very little to do with what the pay at this school district is and much more to do with the draw of the big city, a spouse that has a much better job opportunity that's just not available out here. So, I mean, but the pay here and the benefits here factor into that, but we can't offer a pay that offsets their spouse's job or things like that, and we just can't compete with that.
Well, no, but I think we have far more teachers that are the main breadwinner in their family than you're assuming.
I don't know what the breakout is.
Regardless,
Yeah.
we can compare ourselves to Blue Valley, but we're not Johnson County.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able
Correct.
to pay like Johnson County. I mean, that's just
Well-
our reality. We're Hayes, Kansas. So, I mean, it's good to throw it in here, I think, and to see what that is. But at the end of the day, we're not Johnson County.
But
I just have
when-
a question real quick. You know, some of these districts, or do they have the 4-day week? I mean, would that factor into anything?
Not that I'm aware
I
of.
don't think they're going to use
Any of those do?
I didn't see.
I know because some of them have gone to the 4-day week.
Is there a, Sarah,
That
you put these
changes.
together? Is there information then about total minutes? So that when we're looking at days versus time, can you make a similar graph that is total minutes? That would be, then we wouldn't have the days versus minutes flip-flop, that minutes, total minutes.
Total minutes, I can
Total minutes a
find
year,
the notes
yeah.
off to the calendar.
That's what the state bases their requirement on. So we could look at how we compare total minutes. I think that would be a real. Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
You
about?
could basically just merge the contract, or the contact time per day with the contact
Yeah,
days, and that would be.
Don't they
the-
have each request or report their minutes?
I don't believe the minutes were pulled in for the Ks. So, but I can
Okay.
try to find them on the website.
Okay. I think that would be a, or even, extra contract.
Numbers, yeah.
Does that all have to work? Okay.
I'm just thinking 40 minutes before school. What time did you say that was?
7:14.
7:14.
I know, and that was part of the discussion last night, is it started to sound awfully early to me, so I was one of the ones advocating, if our goal is X amount of minutes, I think it makes more sense to throw them on the back end, not the beginning. But, I mean, this is the starting point of the discussion. So here's the data, here was, the reasons why we wanted to look at this, and now, digest it.
Okay. Are there other things here you've altered?
I don't think anything other than,
I think the duty-free lunch, there was
It's the
a
same.
sentence, well,
No, you took
I think
out,
that the, what did it say, and I don't.
The
Basically,
last
the
sentence.
teachers,
Yeah.
Yeah, teachers shall have first opportunity to
Yeah,
perform service
just
during the noon
because
hour at the wage set
we-
forth in the extra duty, extra
I
pay
mean,
salary.
That's a no-brainer, we would like them to do that.
But the wage, is that why it's in there to
well, I
demonstrate
think
the
part of the
wage?
problem is too, is if we could have a volunteer do the same job at no cost, why would we pay somebody $30 an hour to do that? If we can have to supervise the lunchroom, if we can have somebody else do that at $10 an hour, if we have to pay somebody, it just doesn't make sense that you would pay somebody $30 an hour to do that.
Have you done an analysis on the cost of these days?
What do you mean?
The cost
We
of the
haven't done
days
it how
to
you
add?
guys have, no, we haven't. We're not looking at it saying, well, this is how much we would have to pay extra to get that, no.
So you have no cost proposal on this edition?
I think there were some items that were focused on budget issues. We didn't look at this as one of them.
It'll cost a little more if we have more days for transportation and food service. However,
Do you have anything else you want to go over on this?
I think that was it for this one.
Are you looking through, because there is some I'd like to
Oh,
talk
is
about
there?
on E.
Oh,
that's what I was just going to say, that was the other,
Sorry.
I just wanted to get, that we had removed number 2.
Okay.
Are you going through, or will we
That
come
was
to
just the
that?
only other one that was on there that had been changed. Down there was E.
Yeah,
And basically,
throw
we had removed on
I
the
just have some
equalized
questions about that.
workloads, basically a teacher's concerns about his or her class makeup should be referred to the principal for action. Should it become necessary, the teacher may submit his or her concern in writing to the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction.
And I think the thought on that is we have a kind of a chain of command already set out by policy, and that's just restating exactly what's already there.
The reason why it's in the contract, even though it's in your policy, is because at any year, you can change your policy without negotiating it. And so to protect the teacher, a lot of, when you're talking about we need to clean up because much of what's in here is in your board policy, well, that's because at a board meeting, you can change your policy at your whim. But in a contract, you have to negotiate it.
No, I understand that, and I guess my question though is that something that, I don't know how that affects you.
Well, in 93, 94, it must have been an issue, and that's why it was put in. I mean,
Where are we at?
we normally, right here,
Equalized workload, what page are you on?
I don't know.
22.
Okay.
I'm on one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because most of the items that have been written in this contract is because that year there was an issue. And we needed to resolve the issue. And that was the language that was written to resolve that issue. And hopefully prevent an issue coming up again.
But if nobody knows what it was in, you know what I mean, it's, to me, that you're addressing, I can't find my version of that, but, I mean, is there something magical that you would go to the principal first, and that if that doesn't resolve it, you'd go to the, I mean, to a position we don't even have?
No, because we don't,
Yeah, we don't
yeah,
have that.
but we have a director now, right? Director.
Well, I mean, I would think you'd say
The only thing I
superintendent.
can think of is that there must have been an issue where a teacher or teachers were concerned, and at that time, I mean, we have had some principals who have tried to coerce teachers to act a certain way. And I'm guessing that in that year, 93, 94, we had one of those principals here. And they feared maybe going to the superintendent. I mean, and that's why much of this language is written in here, because teachers feeling bullied and fearful of their evaluations and their jobs if they tried to go above a certain level. And so this language was written in to help guarantee them some protection.
But, I mean, if it was the principal that's the problem, this is saying you got to go there first. If we take it out, you can go to the superintendent first. And, I mean, it kind of leaves it to you guys who you go to. And if you don't get an answer you need there, you go to the next level, or, I mean,
So you want to take number 2 out?
Just number 2 out.
yeah.
Why?
He just-
What does it hurt, what does it hurt you? I mean,
It-
how does this bother you?
It's just, I don't see that it's needed language.
I don't see the point of it. I mean, to me, it's common sense. You're basically going through and following. I mean, are you saying if this isn't in there, then you're not going to feel comfortable going to talk to a principal, or if that doesn't get resolved, you'd go to the superintendent just because?
I'm
it's
saying
not
there
in
are
the
some
contract?
teachers that feel that way.
But let's say that, so they're saying the only way they feel comfortable is if it's in writing.
What this does is this gives someone the right to go to their principal and without being accused of being insubordinate. If I had a problem with my class makeup and my principal was not responsive, my contract says that I have the right to go speak to the next person up. And without that, then I could be accused of being insubordinate. So that protects that
But this
teacher.
wouldn't let you do that either unless you've already went to your principal.
It says, should it become necessary. So I don't think this would change.
But you could still have that if the principal says, well, I was dealing with that. You had no reason to go. I mean, you can, well, we can argue the merits of being able to do that, but I mean, to me, it's not a big deal. I think it hurts you guys more than it helps us, so. It handcuffs you to do certain things. We don't, I mean, for us.
And perhaps that line was put in there because the administrators wanted to be the first role. Because,
Could be.
I mean, we always tell parents, before you go to administrator, talk to the teacher first.
Well, that's what our policy says, has always
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
You know, you try and resolve it at the lowest level first and work your way up from
Right.
there. But I mean, I don't think it's something to fight over.
Nope,
It's, I mean,
it's not. Okay. And the summer school, did you make a change to summer school? Summer school.
They put that in there.
we thought about taking it all out, but then realized we couldn't, so.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have summer school, except for
And
teachers.
basically,
Then
you
we
want to
realized we had
do, if you're
those
going to
two teachers, so
insert the, you need to make it lowercase because it's following a colon and it's not a complete sentence.
Where are you at?
Included the following, we have just included the following: number of required contract hours, required in-service, and required parent-teacher.
Well, that's how, I think that's how it read to start.
I don't
So
show that any changes were made on that.
It's just-
It says number.
Maybe just
The
a grammatical
the whole
error.
contract's full of
Yeah.
those types of
Grammatical
things
error.
that we need to address.
Okay. Do you have anything more on this proposal that you need to share with us?
I think so.
The concurrent credit language, I couldn't get together because I needed more information from Barton County, and I just got that today, so I'll try to work that up over the week and have it next week.
Is this your proposal about leaves?
Yes.
And then, do we have Dean, are you and Tracy still going to serve on leave committee?
Well, Tracy is, I go to anyone I can, but I'm not, since I can't make it to all of them, I
Okay.
consider myself a committee member, but I attend when I can.
I think the first section there, A, we basically just changed some of the, change it to basically PTO or paid time off in there as far as instead of annual leave, basically change it to paid time off per school year. And that basically includes, or basically has the 11 days. I think we go on to explain those here down below. Let's see, give me just 1 second. The accumulated leave in section B then goes on and basically explains where we're talking about as far as building that up and basically how we're handling those. Everybody can read through that.
What's your justification of forcing the teacher to submit a request for the unused PTO time? I mean, I'm guessing that's anything above the 80 days. The teacher has to submit in writing by May 1 that I want that money, otherwise it's gone. What's the justification of that?
Where you at?
B, the last sentence in the first paragraph.
On which one?
When we reviewed the other contracts, I think we looked at 8. Every one of them had a cap for accumulated leave, and almost, I want to say, every one had a policy such as this. Where there's some paper trail, and then it's paid consequently from that. If it's not, and it's not requested, then you don't.
I'm just thinking, okay, May 1, I'm in the end of the school year, and I've got so many issues going on with kids being gone with spring sports and grading and planning and trying to be strong by the, throughout the end of the year. And now I have to remember one more thing, and that is on May 1, file this paperwork that says, okay, I'm at 80 going into the school year. I have 11 days. I didn't use any days, so now I have 91. Well, to get paid for those 11, I have to remember that by May 1, I need to sign this form saying I want my money. Otherwise, it's gone. And to me, it's just one more thing that you have to remember when you're in the throes of finishing out the end of the year.
Personal property tax in December, or signing up for the insurance for next year. I mean, there's just a lot of deadlines.
And everybody's got an electronic calendar that reminds you.
What's the date on checks?
June 25th is when we get them.
No.
Well, no,
you have
the
to turn
date
it
when
in.
you have to turn it
Oh, yeah, and that's
What's
like
the date
in
on
May, or February or March.
No, it is.
Isn't it?
It was just here in April.
It was like April 15th.
Yeah, it was almost.
When you had to
like
write that sign, fill that paper?
Yeah,
I thought it was
whatever
earlier
that-
than that.
Well, but the deal is too, is that, I mean, in a way, the May 1st date just seems a little interesting just because of the fact that we still have 3 weeks of school left.
Yeah.
As to whether or not, for submission of that, in that regard. I mean, as to whether or not there is,
I mean, will there be an appeal process if a person forgets?
I don't
or
know
allow
that
for
that's
resubmission.
set on that date.
Well, I mean,
I don't know how many people.
Well, yeah, assuming you had 11 days and you had some chronic illness in May and used all of them, well,
Well,
we're not
yeah.
going to pay you both, but, you know, you just have to send out the notice.
But if you send the notice out, you had 11, but you
Used
used
four.
3,
Yeah.
you're just saying you're going to get paid for it, 8. You just want paid for it. So,
I think it puts the onus on you guys to decide what you want to do instead of us to go find out what you want to do.
So you're still, in their second paragraph, you're still asking the teacher to give up 20 days even though you're capping it?
That's, yeah.
Because we always had the first 20 days off, but we didn't have a cap. So if you're proposing a cap,
200 some days accumulated,
yeah.
do you lose them? A person would lose all those?
Are you proposing this immediately for everyone, or are you proposing this for new hires?
Well, I think it
Are you
lays it out
grandfathering?
pretty well, where you'd be.
Nobody's grandfathered in there?
You're not grandfathering, your proposal does not allow for grandfathering in of people that have accumulated time.
Well, somewhat. I mean,
Where
you'd
does
have
it
the
say
2
that?
year, if you have 15 years and have been employed and you retire in the next 2 years, you'd get that.
Let's see. So if you retire,
I'm just thinking, as a teacher, we're one of the low-end professions, and people don't look at us as professionals, unfortunately, but we are professionals. And we come in at the low end, and you're looking at
I disagree
the
that
end.
you're low end, though, because, I mean, 35,000
That's a
isn't
low
a
end.
lot of money, but it was more than I started out with a law degree. So, and it's not that
Well,
we're
my
comparing.
friends who started out as engineers, they were making 55 and 60.
Okay, but
now, hold on, though.
In Hayes?
Because if you take the entire calendar year, 12 years, and you put the salary and everything
Yeah.
goes towards it.
they work
that's
2,080 hours
But-
minimum.
So if we're going to make that comparison, I would say we just got to keep it on the same.
Well, I work at least a 40-hour work
you don't
week
have
with a
to.
2-week vacation.
But you don't have to.
But what
Yeah, I
you
do, to
just
complete
said
my-
was-
complete my
we
job, I
think about
do.
kids. We think about those kids all summer long. We're in those classrooms at the end of July preparing those classrooms because you only give us 2 days to prepare for a whole school year. She
I mean-
has just told us that we are here for the kids. We do not get off May 18th. I have never been out of my classroom by May 18th. I am in that classroom before August. I do not work 10 months. of the
well,
calendar year.
and these colorful bar graphs, that's the comment we made. Is this all we have to work? Because that nobody is working that schedule.
Yeah,
And you're
well-
saying we work the minimum and we're working these little short bars. Nobody is working that schedule.
Well, but I think the
Whereas-
Everybody's
problem you
working
get
more.
into on that, though, is there's what, 300 teachers?
256.
256 last time I
256,
looked.
okay. So you got 256 teachers. You're telling me that every single teacher works the exact same schedule every day, all year long?
I'm saying
Telling you
they
see
work,
it every day.
we are salaried employees. We're not hourly, we don't punch a clock. We are salaried employees, and we work the time that we need to work to get the job done, to fulfill the obligations that you put in the board policy that we need to cover, to fulfill what we have in the contract. We're salaried employees. We do not get vacation pay. We do not get summer pay. Our pay is for the base contract. You even said that in here, the base contract of what you propose, 186 days.
But you
Now,
do some of that.
our salaries are kept by the state and doled out in increments so they can earn the interest and not us. I mean, we are service professionals.
That's how every contract is.
But
You're talking about for
if you,
summer months or all year?
if you finish a job in May, do you have to wait till June 25th to get your paycheck?
Well, depending on who I'm working for, often yes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it just
I
depends
would-
who's paying you. Sometimes you gotta wait 60 or 90 days, sometimes longer, sometimes I never get paid.
But people are under the misperception that we get paid for the summer months. And we don't get paid for the summer months. They've taken our contract days and divided it
But
into 12 months so that
You
we
guys
can have a
gotta-
monthly
The
paycheck.
tough part about that argument, though, is one hand, you're saying we work 12 months a year, all those hours, But you can't say we work 12 months because we get paid 12 months, so we only work 9 months, or, so I mean, you can't have it both ways, it's one of the
Well,
other.
I'm just saying, we're a salaried employee.
Absolutely.
And we work as many hours as it takes to get our job done.
Correct.
Some people have less time, others have more time. But you work the hours that you have to get done.
And I'm not a teacher. I can look at different lines of work like yours and look at it and say, as an English teacher, I can see that you're going to put a whole lot more hours in than other teaching positions. I could enunciate those, but I'm not going to do that. But, I mean, there's positions that I could look at and say that there's probably not a lot of take-home work that goes home with them.
But while those other entities may not have grading, they have prep work. I mean, some of those have research they have to do in order to prep their classes. So, I mean, I just want to help you understand that we're salaried employees. So our contract days can't be...
Well, I guess, the problem is when we have this argument, then, if that's the case, and everybody's working all these hours, then what is the big deal about more contract days or more contract hours? Because everybody's working them anyway, right?
Do you want us to literally just follow the contract to the letter?
No. But the question, though, is if everybody's doing over that, and you're doing these number of days and these number of hours, you're working 365 days a year, or 260 was what 5 days a week for 52 is, or 52 weeks, but if you're working that anyway,
Well,
then...
Because if you're going to expand that, then that's going to expand then again the extra time and above. And if you're going to, if I'm working late every day and I'm there, I don't walk out with the kids. I don't walk out even when the bell rings. I don't know very many people who do. I know lots of people who show up at 7 in the morning. I know lots of people who are still there at 4:30 at night. So then if you add to that, then that's even more that you expand beyond that. And from what I can tell, you're saying you want us to do it for free.
Well, my
If
whole
you're getting there
point...
early in the morning and you're staying late anyway, I mean,
But it's my choice.
It's my choice, and it's and that's the respect, and that's the professionalism.
My time, in addition to what my contract says, is to help the kids.
Right.
Whether it's
Yeah.
getting the grading done, and a lot of us do this, again, on the block schedule, but if my kids, and I'm talking my AP kids, they turn an essay in on Monday, they get that essay back on Wednesday. No excuses, nothing, because I don't ever ask a kid to do something I'm not willing to do myself.
But I guess
Therefore, well, and I'm just saying that.
But I think,
my point was not to get into this debate right here, but to say that we put all this work in. We are not in the private sector where you get bonuses or you get incremental raises because of evaluations. We don't see that. We only see that at the end of our career in terms of the severance check. And the severance check is the sick leave pay that we didn't use because we wanted to be there for the students. I mean, the majority of teachers always say, I don't want to be sick. I don't want to leave my classroom because making sub notes are a nightmare. I want to be there for my students. I want to make sure they keep moving in the direction they need to go. And so, plus I'm saving the district $20 a day every time I'm in there.
And part of my education this last year has been learning the school industry and understanding these arguments coming from teachers and what it's like and what made you go into teaching and those sort of things. And I'm listening to that. So then, when I look at the 8 other contracts and see that all of them do have a cap on accumulated leave, I have to come back and say, why would we, how can we justify being different?
Do you look at...
Because these are other schools, these are comparable schools.
Did you look at severance pay? I mean, do they have anything in their contracts that talk about severance pay? Because I'm hearing that Shawnee
A lot of them
Mission...
look just like the one we presented.
Shawnee Mission, I've heard, has a pretty decent policy. And
We looked at Shawnee Mission.
Olathe, in terms of early retirement, their incentive was pretty interesting. I mean...
Again, we looked at 8, we looked at Shawnee Mission and Blue Valley, so we can pull up Shawnee Mission.
And I'm not arguing the cap. I think we're willing to listen and talk about that, but I think the debate's going to be in grandfathering, because we have many teachers who have saved those days, and you're talking losing $200 210 days.
Let's hear it.
And I think that's the whole thing. I think we're getting off track here. I guess that's what I want to reiterate is the fact that it's not like that what we're saying is this is the only way it's going to be. I mean, we're putting this out here so we can discuss it and go through it and give you guys a chance to go through and let us know of those things.
And we came up with this, looking at those other contracts. I mean,
And-
we didn't just bring this up. So we looked at these other contracts and said, you know, we don't have this, but almost every other one does.
I had a question on the day. What was the range of sick leave days and amounts? So you gave us your proposal, but do you have that? Or did you read that? The range from the high to low?
We were the high.
So,
I know we were, but I mean from the other schools.
I don't know that I have that.
so you're saying, so this proposal, if I'm understanding it right, a person could not even accumulate for usage, not for payout, but for usage, more than 80 days. So if if we have people who, I mean, we had a teacher who had a phone call about an illness and never came back to work, and he needed his sick days. So are we saying then that we wouldn't
I guess the question I
accumulate?
have on that, though, is, I mean, we appreciate that you're going to have those people that have catastrophic illnesses
Sure.
and we can list those that have had them over the last several years, but the question becomes is, do we design a policy that creates protection for that person? You know, and if that's what we're doing, that's fine, but the question becomes is, then you have an unlimited amount of leave, and those dollars are going to somebody when they leave as severance pay versus being utilized for pay, and you're talking about getting frozen on the schedule. You can't move if you don't have money. So if we're paying out at the end, you're not going to have it in the now to get that movement. So
But again, the payout
it's a trade-off.
That end has always been promised.
But the end problem is, I mean, isn't that really, I mean, and I'm not trying to make any accusations or accuse him of anything, but really it's just, the reason that's so appealing is you get to inflate your annual earnings at the end so you can jump up your retirement.
If you're hired before
Most
93 and
people
capers.
Well, but-
If you're a part of capers in 93.
Right. but
That only applies
most of
to
the
a few
people we're
people.
talking
Yeah.
about is, I mean, anybody that's going to be retiring would have been pre-93, right, in the near
Yeah.
future? Or most.
If they've been in capers pre-93.
I mean, career.
And that's why I'm
teachers.
asking, are you going to grandfather in? Because if I was hired as part of the caper system, not in this district, but as part of the caper system before 93, I want that money as part of my retirement.
Sure.
I mean, I planned for it, I want it.
Well, and doesn't that,
Look, guys, you need to understand, if I was arguing, I do this for a living, and so I take the side that I'm on. Zach can appreciate that with what he does. I mean, but the problem with it is, you got to also understand the other side of it, though, I mean, what you're saying is, I mean, the caper system's designed that you're going to take your last 3 years average, right? Or the old system was. Not that you're going to go pad the last year with extra money to go falsely inflate that number. And, I mean, that's what we've allowed to have happen. And so, I mean, there's a negative side to that, too, or at least an argument on the other side that that's not even what capers was intended to do. I mean, I understand if it were my money, I'd be right there with you arguing for it.
well,
But
don't
that's
you
not
think
what we're looking
that
at.
someone with an accumulation of days like that, instead of frowning upon that, you would see that as an indication they were a very dependable employee? They showed up every day, they did their job?
Yeah.
I mean, I think
The
that's an
problem with-
indication, and
The
you
problem with
guys-
that, though, is
can I
when we
finish?
have, yes.
Well, because the other thing too is that you've talked about rewarding good employees or merit pay ideas. Isn't that also a benefit or sort of a merit pay for someone who really showed up every day, did their job, and had good work ethic, good health, and some good luck? And you could see that as a sort of a merit pay for that person. Thank you, maybe include a little thank you card. Hey, thanks for showing up every day. Instead of trying to take things away from them, could we not be seeing it as a reward for
But I think
loyal
you're making an
service?
assumption that just because you show up every day, that makes you a great employee. That's a
Well-
component. You can't be if you're not there. But
I think attendance is an indication of being a good employee, and if they're showing up every day and doing a poor job, that's why we have an evaluation system. And that should, I mean, that should not,
When you evaluate students, though, I would assume that their attendance is important.
Right, but
And
we
so I would assume
we don't fail kids because they have bad attendance, do we?
Well,
And we don't give the whole class an A because,
Or fail the entire class.
yeah.
The
I mean,
allowance of accumulation was put into place just for that, right? We were trying to reward people for being there.
Sure.
For showing up, okay? And that is an example of how the school district is different than other industries, right? Because most people will get at most, I don't know, well, most don't get any carryover sick leave.
Well,
But most,
Okay, so
hold on.
that's why it was put into place, and we can appreciate that. But most of these policies, again, that we're looking at, have a reasonable cap on that, whereas we do not. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about doing away with the accumulation, we're just saying we need to put a
And I think
reasonable
a
cap
number
on
of
financial reasons.
Another reason it was put into play like that, though, is most professions, you don't have to find a sub to work your job.
No, the other people that are there that day do it.
Yeah,
So
right.
anybody
You don't
else-
have to write sub notes, you don't have to find someone, but, so the district has to hire an additional person to take my classes. No one can carry the load.
Well, we
And so
wouldn't have
it was
to.
it was put there to help to save money for the district.
We wouldn't have to hire somebody, but the contract requires us to do it because others don't cover during their planned periods and whatever else. I mean, at my office, when
Not
we have
without being
somebody
paid for
sick,
it.
somebody else, right, and that's the problem. I mean, at my office, I don't know, the other employees that are there when somebody's out sick, they don't get paid any more that day than they did the day before. They just cover that person's load, and then, you know, we're behind. Next day, that person, when they come back from being sick, they catch up, and that's how nearly every other business works.
But, you know, it's supervision of students.
I understand, but.
And we are saving the district at least $20 a day when you don't have to hire a sub.
Right.
The state,
And again, it's a reasonable policy, but we need a cap on it. I think it's unreasonable.
And like I said, I'm not debating the cap idea
Right.
for new hires.
Well, so
But
I think the
the
discussion
people
then
who-
becomes, let's come up with a plan for, give us
Right.
something that you
Yeah.
propose for
And I think
grandfather.
that-
And this is where I think it needs to go to the leave committee.
right.
And they
And they
look at
look
the
at it.
ramifications and figure out the cost
state employees
savings.
do have unlimited sick accumulation. They have a cap on the payout, but they have an unlimited, they can accumulate an unlimited amount.
I
So,
don't
and
mind
those
the
are two
state
different
plan.
things.
State of
How much
Kansas.
you're paid out and how much you can accumulate for usage.
I will
So,
have to say, though, in agreement with the idea
I like
that there are school districts that we have on that list that do allow for the total accumulation of days, but their payout is pennies.
Like $25 versus
Yeah, or even
ours,
as low as
yes.
15 in that regard. And they go up to 25 once you have 20 years of service.
Right.
And that sort of thing. So, I mean, they are very minimal in terms of what we're looking at there. I guess my question is that how much does this really help in the idea of an unfunded liability? You still have 380 employees that still have 80 to 100 accumulated days, and you're still not fixing, and yet the board can still come here to say, we still have now, instead of a $1.4 million unfunded liability, now we have a $1 million unfunded liability. And will that be the position of a future board possibly to say that, you know, that this is just the tip of the iceberg? Because this, although I think that this is a good proposal that will definitely, there's good things in here to say that, to be able to work with, but in terms of being able to get rid of that dirty phrase of an unfunded liability, it's still here.
It will be no matter what,
Yes.
but it's going to be a capped liability, and ideally, I'm not going to say after June 30th, but ideally a board would set aside money for that, and it would no longer be an unfunded liability. They'd actually budget for it, but with the current financials climate, I don't know that you could do that. I mean, normally you would have, any liability like that, you'd have, if it's $1.5 million, you'd have $1.5 million sitting there to pay it, but that's, you know, the board will have to figure out how they're going to do that, but there's nothing we can do here to tie the hands of a future board, just as you guys can't tie the hands of the NEA next year.
Is there a reason why 80 days was possibly chosen?
That was based off,
I think it was the ones we liked. I mean, I don't know.
It was based
there's
off several
nothing
of the other
magical to it, but it's
contracts, I
just
believe.
kind of,
All the numbers were having put in based on other plans, whatever.
Basically like the equivalent of about 4 months.
that'd be about 7 years of
Well,
leave
no, I
time.
mean, but 4 months
Of time off.
leave.
No.
And-
I don't think there was anything along those lines of how much time one could take off.
And there's a sick leave pool.
Yeah,
did you
the other-
change the sick leave pool at all?
I'm sure it did because of the PTO
We changed the PTO, the red line.
And you
area,
got rid of leave for illness
instead of annual leave.
or death of relative?
There wouldn't be, I mean, with the PTO, there wouldn't be any other leave time.
I mean, there's a list of them there that you can see behind it, so you,
But you got rid of the leave for illness or death of a relative.
Right. Well, then.
So there's no bereavement leave.
No, there is, it's PTO.
That's only 11 days. I mean, we have 11 sick days now. We have bereavement pay. I mean, bereavement days. Yeah, I mean, 11 days, if I'm sick for 3 days, now I have 8, and then my spouse dies or my child dies, and all of a sudden I have no bereavement pay? I mean, even my daughter has bereavement pay. I mean, she has 2 weeks vacation, 1 week PTO, 3 days sick, which that's 18 days.
It's not PTO if she has 3 days sick, because PTO includes.
No, she has, the way her
Where does
company
she
calls
work?
it, Morel in Kansas City,
Well,
the way
they
her
gotta have a
company
leave
calls it,
plan.
they call it 2 weeks
That's-
vacation, 5 days of PTO, 3 days of sick, and then bereavement pay. And she gets 2 weeks for
14 days or 10 days of 2 weeks off?
10 days. It's 5 days.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, and then 5 days of PTO, so that's 15, 3 days of sick,
18.
so that's 18. And then she gets 2 weeks for immediate family members, which is mother, son. And then she gets 3 days for aunts and uncles. And then she gets jury pay, but she's never been on a jury, so she has no idea how much that is.
Well,
And that's why I'm asking, why would you leave bereavement pay? I mean, 11 days of PTO is not enough time for bereavement. Not when you
How do
could possibly...
most other places do it then? I mean,
They have a
11 days of
bereavement.
PTO.
They have
I don't
PTO and a
agree with that at all.
bereavement.
Well,
There's a
then,
lot of places that don't
if
have
you're
bereavement.
taking away sorts of leave and leaving the number the same, then what would be appealing
but the
about that?
problem is why would you, I mean, if we took all those capped in, because we've got, I mean, I think you guys could have up to, what did we figure, about 50 or 60 days of leave a year paid?
Do they take
Well, there's
it?
30
Is that
well,
realistic?
But if it's there, and if we said we're not going to, because there's, what is it, 37 days for association leave?
We only have 10 days that we can use at our discretion.
So there's
And
10.
but that's not 10 per person. That's for the whole
Something
group.
like that.
That's 10 for the entire group. So we have 10 days to portion out to, like if we are going to a meeting or something, that isn't certainly not 10 days per person.
But
That's
if you
for
just
total.
add up all the total days that are available, it's
You'd have to
pretty
have a lot of people
substantial.
die. I mean, that, is that,
Well, I didn't even put the bereavement in there. I mean, you just take the days
No.
that are logical that would be taken, sick
what would be the,
leave,
what are you
personal
looking at?
leave.
You have the logical days we have are the 11. And then if you have somebody very ill or die,
Right, but,
you have a few more days. It is not excessive.
okay, but then you've got Labor Day, 3 days for Thanksgiving, which most have too.
Those are
You've
not-
got
those are not
6 to 10
PTO.
days for winter break, but I'm just talking about time off.
Well, I'm
But
talking
that's
we're
not part of
talking
our
about-
contract days.
We're talking
Those aren't
about-
part of
No,
our
but
contract
We're
days.
talking about leave time now, and you're talking about days that school isn't even in session.
And
But-
those aren't
but
contract
We're comparing
days.
ourselves to others that don't have those days off, that get 18 days and
Well,
bereavement,
My daughter, she gets Labor Day off. She gets Thanksgiving break, not part of her PTO.
2 days.
She gets,
She probably gets 2 days.
Thursday and
She gets
Friday.
2 for Christmas,
Yeah.
probably.
My question is.
I think she
if
gets 3
you're-
for Christmas.
If you're leaving the number at 11, but then removing all these other sorts of leave, what is the appeal of that?
It simplifies it for the business office. They don't have to.
That's the appeal for you.
That's-
What makes it sellable to the teacher?
Well, they
Again,
can
we're going
use-
through
they can
and
use
just
all
making a
11 days
proposal
for
here.
whatever
We're
they
not saying
want.
this is what has to be going. That's what we're saying. Come back with something. I mean, that's the reason we're bringing this stuff to the table, is so we can kind of start point.
We can argue about,
Yeah.
And then,
I mean-
tell us what works, what doesn't work, what's an alternative.
So I guess my question too is your intention to encourage use of days? Do you want people to use their days down? Are we just
we're
looking at?
providing flexibility
do we-
for you guys.
Do we have, the past policy, what incentivized not using days, being at work? Does this policy
But
do
it-
that?
Well, that might have been the intent, but the average is 8 days per person that they use for leave. So I guess, I don't know if that's, depends
Well,
on how
we
you look
know-
at it, that's good or bad.
We know the personal days were used at about half. Do you feel like they would I mean, I think that you would see usage rise. Because we have 4 personal days. We had 275 teachers last year. We used 540 days. It was right at 2.
But we can't, I mean, there's no way for us to tell whether somebody's using sick leave if they're saying, well, we're going to, if it's close, they're coming to work, or, you know, there's no way, whether under the current plan or any future plan, to know if that's going to be on a per-person basis. Some people have that ethic and some don't. Some will call in sick because they, you know, they just
But
don't
then
want to go
they
to work
better
that
not
day.
be caught somewhere.
Well, right,
you know.
but there are those people that'll do that. And, you know, I'm not saying there's a lot,
You feel
but
like the teachers are doing this? You're finding that this is a problem with the teaching
I
staff?
did not say that. I'm just saying
I mean, well,
that as a...
are we setting a policy on reality? Are we looking at stuff that's really happening and changing our policy on something that's really happening?
At the end of the day, I think you can look at it, I mean, I can go through it from personal experience and years back working at a company, and I can remember when I left the company, I had hundreds and hundreds of hours of sick time. I got $0 for that when I left. However, I look at some of the other people that work there, and I can remember, you know, being in conversations like, I got 8 hours of sick time built up, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. So at the end of the day, I have to look back and say, God, who was the smart one at the end of that one? Because he used all his sick time. I got nothing out of it at the end of the day. So I guess what I'm saying is, you're going to have people, no matter what job you're, unfortunately, that are going to take advantage of the system. And whether that means calling in because they tore a fingernail, or maybe you have somebody that truly is sick and needs to use it. I mean, I don't think we can create a policy around that.
Or judge those
people.
But I think you do have a policy now that rewards and incentivizes people to be there, and it acknowledges that in the end, that they were there.
So would
And
this.
that's good for our kids. That's good for our students, if the teacher is there rather than a sub.
Why do I
And-
need to reward somebody to be at their job? I guess that's a question I have. Why do I have to reward you to do your job?
Because if you had.
And I'm not trying to be, I'm just asking, I mean.
'Cause
any
we don't
other
get
job you go to,
bonuses.
I mean,
Your child is going to school, and in 2 years she's up for retirement and has so many days to use. She's going to use all those. She's going to use all those days. So now your student, unfortunately, is left with somebody who is not certified, has no idea what the core curriculum means, and they're now teaching your child.
But that same teacher wouldn't be very smart to do that, because then she doesn't get to have her days bought back at the end of the year.
Okay, so say maybe I'm at.
So that puts the money in your
at
pocket
50
today,
days,
and you get to
and I
invest
don't get
it.
paid for anything, and I'm at 50 days. No, I guess.
No, you would get paid no matter
But
what.
even-
You could
even if
accrue
there's
it.
teachers that, I guess, who have been here longer.
The only ones I think that have an argument in this is those that have over 80 days. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
and so,
And here again, let's talk about that. Let's figure out
Yeah.
the grandfather
Yeah.
clause, you know?
And I think I know what you're saying, I guess that's, and maybe it was just the wording, that's why I'm saying, I guess I just don't understand the wording as far as doing
I think
see what
you
you're
just,
saying.
in the
would
private
you do it
sector,
differently
and I'm
with
not
this
going to say
plan?
every company,
Sure.
but most people in a private sector as professionals, I'm not talking, you know,
if this plan
high
were
school
in
kids
existence
working
during the
at
entire
their
time, would
jobs,
you do it any
but as
differently?
professionals, they get a bonus at Christmas or something.
But I mean,
I mean, my daughters have
you are who you
gotten
are.
everything from
I
turkeys
hope I would.
to $500 to $300 in gift cards.
But having said that, and on the other flip side of that, in all fairness, there's a lot of businesses
But
that
you'd
don't do
also
that
get
at all
your money
because
at
they
the end
can't
of the year.
afford
I
it.
think
Money's
if you
not
ran
there.
the numbers out.
So I mean, it's, you know,
on the
we can look at
investment
it
rate
both
of
ways.
taking
And
that
don't,
money,
I
those 200
completely
hours
respect
you
and
got
I
paid every
understand
year,
what you're saying.
and just put it in a savings account or investment account and pay money on it, it'd be about the same.
Well, but
Has it always been?
the point that I'm making, though, is that
Probably.
When I got here, it was-
Hey,
when your
I don't
people,
think anybody knows that for a fact. I don't think we actually have the.
Sorry.
what's going on?
Two different conversations going on.
Okay?
I was wondering as to whether or not if there was ever the date in which an uncapped, or like.
If it was
the
ever
idea-
different.
Yes.
Not
We used-
since I've been
We used
here.
to take off 30 days off the front. And then, and the reasoning behind the taking off the front was that so people that had not been here very long weren't benefiting. It was really meant as a benefit, a severance pay idea for loyal employees who had been here a long time, and an incentive, and a cost saving that we didn't, you know, we can push down the cost of leave, and we can push up the cost of substitute pay. And in my mind, we'd rather be paying the teachers that should be there, you know, teachers that know the kids, that know the curriculum, rather than beefing up substitute pay. You know, we love our good substitutes, but would we rather see the money going there? Because if we start, I mean, you've got to consider when we start talking about these ideas, what is going to be the unintended consequence, and is it good for our students? And is it really going to save money if we just increase the cost somewhere else?
But if I have a teacher who's abusing the policy, or trying to find loopholes in the policy, that's not good for my students.
No.
Are they a
Right?
good teacher?
So, huh?
Are they a good teacher if they're doing that?
No, but
I
it's-
mean, so that's the thing. I mean, to try to create a policy around that,
No, not to find loopholes, but to say, like, our current policy, I feel like, is a reward. At the end, it's better than the little pin.
But this
You
is
know,
a
it's-
reward annually.
Is the unlimited piece of it? Is that, when you say we have a policy now?
We have a policy now that is a reward to those teachers who didn't use a lot of leave, who didn't have to use a lot of leave.
Because it's unlimited? That piece of it?
You know, I think we can look at that.
Okay.
But to say that we want to take it away
Are we proposing that?
By taking away bereavement pay and keeping PTO at 11.
I'm not sure that was intended. I'm not sure that
Get
was
to your max.
intended. I mean,
and you
again,
can
this
pay
is
out
meant to be a
additional
starting
over the course
Okay.
of time. How is that? any
But I think
good?
all the
Lump
things
sum,
we look
so
at, I think we want to,
If you
I
invest
guess
it,
consider the effect on
Right.
human behavior.
it's kind of
And I
like,
agree with
You know,
you.
it's kind of like your
because
taxes.
arguments.
You can
And if
put a
we
high
have
number.
people
Hey,
say-
we have two
or a
conversations
low
going on.
number, however you
Let's
look at
try
it.
to
Low
keep it to
number,
one.
they take more out, and
Please.
you get a big return at the end of the year. What?
I said we have two conversations going on. We need to keep it to one.
I have a question on that. So if, let's say somebody was at their 80 and then they accumulated 5 extra days, would they be able to come back and be compensated for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
That's the
that's that May 1st deadline where I'm so busy, my mind's going to
But
forget
if you
that
look
May
at it,
1st deadline.
It's like your tax return every year. If you tell them to take out as much as they possibly can out of your return because you don't know how to save money, and then you get a big tax return at the end of the year, that looks good to some people, but most people would have been smarter to claim a low number, take that money, put it in their bank, draw interest on their money instead of the government drawing it. But, you know, this is the same thing. You take your money, if it's, you know, whatever, $550 or roughly.
And that's why I'd rather have all my money May 25th instead of getting it in June for June, July, and August. Because I've already completed my contract, my days are done. We used to get it in May when I first came here.
I thought you could choose. You can't.
No, you can't choose. It's June 20, we used to get
Oh,
it
that's
May
right.
25th, on our last school day. And then we got our June, July, and August checks, which was really payment for all the 9 months we worked.
What's the, what was the basis of the May 1 date? Is that arbitrary, or is there
It's
a
just-
reason for May 1?
Just need a date.
So the date is flexible. I mean, we can
Absolutely,
look
right.
at the date, okay.
Because I'm thinking, why not make it part of checkout?
Well, I don't know that any of this is locked in stone other than the concept and the cap and those things. I mean, I think we're willing to look at alternatives. I mean, if the answer is, well, we'll only give up 1 day, then that's probably not going to work. But if, you know, this is the concept we want to work towards, and so however we can get closest to that. If we need a grandfathering in provision, I mean, we kind of anticipated that as we talked through it, so.
Do you agree or maybe disagree that the 11 days of PTO, is that on the low end of most of the contracts that you're seeing? Because most of them that I saw, I thought it was somewhere closer to 15 or 17.
The drawback you get in that, though, is if you put that number too high, then you can really get yourself into trouble. And then the unintended consequences do flow, because then you can use it for whatever. So if it's PTO, you can't say, well, you're not sick that much, because you don't need to be sick to use it. You can go on vacation.
Right.
And do whatever you want.
And that's what
So-
we were saying, the incentive with the sick leave is that, I would hope the majority of teachers are ethical.
Sure.
And they wouldn't lie.
probably are.
And we do have some teachers who needed to be gone more than the 4 days of PTO, and they had to take 1 day of no pay because they chose not to lie,
You don't have that here,
you know.
or wouldn't have it.
Yeah, but by taking the bereavement pay, and I think we need to talk about that, because I just think you need something with bereavement in here, major medical bereavement.
But the drawback to that, though, is, I mean, how do you, the problem with the bereavement is this. Like, right now, if you've said if you had an aunt die, or whatever, I don't know what it is, but let's say it's 3 days, okay? Well, what if you have a third cousin that you were closer to than any aunt
Well,
you've
you
ever
can,
known?
We already have that lined out to where you get extra days only for very, very close relatives.
What if it's just a really, really close friend?
Then you take a personal day, then you just take PTO.
But
But
if you
that
didn't
would
have-
be
if
your,
you don't have
that'd be like a
PTO.
personal day or a sick day. So like now.
But now
if-
you're calling in sick for a day that you're not sick.
Excuse
I
me.
mean, that's, I guess I'm,
No,
right
it
now,
allows
you
us
don't.
to.
Because it's a mental anguish.
What it says here, that
But you don't have to justify it, is what I'm getting at,
mother,
under PTO.
father, spouse, or child is the only time you're going to get 5 days. Or extra 3 days is like siblings, your parents-in-law, your child-in-law, or a grandparent. You can get time because you're going to be involved in the family matters there. So after that, there is no extra leave.
I mean,
Those
I
are
could-
just your very
But if
close
it's your
relatives.
in-laws, I mean, arguably.
Your
you could-
mother-in-law?
But you could be just as close or closer to them. I mean, if your spouse is going to be there, you're probably going to want to be there for your spouse. I mean,
Well, sure, but you get that.
we could have the argument about a mother-in-law and say, well, you'd never want to be there for that, but that's not the case for everybody. And so some people would want to be there. Some may not want to be there for their own parents. I mean, and so, I
This
mean, I don't
just says
think you
it
can.
may, you just request, it doesn't require you take off.
Well, and part of this, I mean, we've also got, one of the things we have in here is a pool. I know one of the other things we talked about, a lot of places will go through, even on PTO, and say for sake of argument, you have a death in the family, or you have a serious illness, or you have the capability to other people to donate time to you, to where if they're not going to use all theirs, they can give it to you, or things like that. I mean, you see that in a lot of different places. Again, this was just a starting point.
But see, here's the deal, I can use my PTO, go on a cruise, and all of a sudden, someone gets sick, and then I'm gonna go apply to people who have
But then,
donated.
but then those people will know you went on your cruise, and they may
Yeah.
not, but,
Well, yeah, but still, I mean,
And that's-
personally, if someone said, I need off because, my mom died, well, I would give it to them.
Sure.
I couldn't take, even though I knew they used all their time on a cruise.
But that's your choice, though, at that point, and.
Well, I mean, that's.
And I mean, if you had, and they claim that that's where it was, you would be less likely to donate, obviously, to that.
Well, I
However,
would
if you
donate
knew somebody
because I would
had
want to be able to use it
cancer
if
and
something
was in
happened.
trouble and needed that time, everyone will know about it and would be more likely
Well,
to donate.
But see, here,
So I
as it
think-
is now, if you don't donate, you don't get to use the pool.
That's the sick
You
pool,
have-
yeah.
Well, but-
And the sick pool
But I
is
think
set-
what Lance is talking about, though, is a concept not of the pool, but of something that you could
Donating
look at,
days.
that you
Right.
could have an open donation where you don't have to have a pool.
And that would help, like, our married spouses, when one,
Yeah.
like maternity leave, then the husband could donate his days to his wife, because she's,
Yeah.
So you can
She's hurting.
personally
Or
decide
vice
who
versa.
you want to.
or vice versa.
That's right.
And then the state does.
I don't think he'll hurt
And
us.
that's, I think, actually, a lot of places do that, to where they allow the employee to pick who they want to donate to.
Well, and in fact, I think when they leave, anything over if they've accumulated over their cap, they can donate that excess of days to people, or to a pool that goes to people in need. We had the pool because we felt like it was very fair, and nobody had to feel like they had to run a campaign to get days. It was fair to everybody. We had teachers who were teaching in very small schools. At the time we started the pool, we still had the little outlying schools. So if we had a teacher that was new and working, say, in Munger, that would be very hard for them to try to convince people to give up leave for them. They don't even know who they are. But then if we had someone at Hayes High who got ill and they were a popular person, they have all kinds of days coming in. So the pool idea was to be fair to all the employees, and everybody's on the same footing, and just because you haven't been here as long or don't know people as well, you're not just going to have to suffer and go bankrupt. So,
I think you'd
Yeah, that
have
was supposed
a
to be fair.
combination of both, though.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, our leave committee, we still have Zach,
Yeah.
Mary was going to be
Yeah.
on there.
We have
And so we may
myself,
need,
Mary Schraub, Lois Smith, and Tracy Kaiser, and Mr. Catwing. who will
okay.
be in
And we'll
attendance.
talk to those people again and make sure they still
Okay.
want to be on that committee, and if not, we'll find a replacement for them. Because we'll need to get them back together and work on that. Because they have some background information on that.
That would be a good group to
Yeah.
talk about some of those options.
Can I ask one question first? I know we're going right back to it, but when in that very first paragraph, it says that PTO is defined as leave to be used for any purpose except those forms of leave discussed in sections E through P. How is it that it's except for E through P, when E through P definitely says everything about why PTO should be used in those instances.
It shouldn't be used for jury, court appearances.
Well, it
attorney
says,
leave.
E through P is sick leave pool. The acts of jury says right there that the maternity leave says that it's subject, all disabilities shall be subject to PTO on maternity leave. The parental leave is all aspects of PTO should be used. Family medical leave, I just didn't know as to whether or not if that was one of a clerical error in the blanket of E through P, as to, because I just didn't know which ones are being subjected to PTO or versus.
Well, like family medical leave is, you can have it, but you don't get paid for it. But, so, you would obviously be able to use your PTO for that.
So your wording, except, is what's bothersome. It
Yeah.
probably needs a different word there.
That probably needs cleaned up.
And A,
Well, it's like all the forms of leave are not
except.
supposed to be PTO.
So you probably want to change the wording except to something else.
But, once again, it's a good starting point, but I just didn't know as to which ones are being intended to be utilized for PTO.
You could put as supplemental to those forms of leave, where they use those other forms of leave first, and then if they need to use PTO, it's a supplement to that leave.
And a lot of those, as you look at, I don't know that a lot of them are just unpaid leave. Is what
Right,
they
most of
are.
them
And so
are.
you could, I don't think you'd want to say you can't use PTO for those. I wouldn't,
Yeah, I just
if you wanted to take it paid, you could.
use your PTO.
Yeah.
But-
I think the rest of it was mainly just grammatical, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know that there was any major changes.
Like I know it looks like instead of director of payroll, it was human resources department. Several other areas where it was changed to PTO from annual leave or sick.
You guys want a red line copy?
That'd be nice.
Someone, do you have
Yeah.
one? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were
Red
reading
line
off of
copy
one
of
before
what?
when you said that, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Oh, no, I was reading out.
A red line
Oh,
copy
okay.
of what?
Okay.
Of these.
I
To
thought
make
maybe they
our
said it out.
corrections,
That would be great too.
like
It-
when there's typos and stuff.
That'll show you the changes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
they're changing, yeah.
Okay. All right. Those are the three things you said you wanted to talk about today. You said you wanted to talk about leave, hours and amounts of work, and concurrent credit. And concurrent credit, we have,
I just got the information from Barton County today, so I'll need the week to get the language together.
okay.
We have another section on
Oh, okay.
grievance
Happy, we can
procedure.
get into
What
it.
is it?
Okay, what is it?
Grievance, the
Grievance,
other one.
we might as well get
This
it
is
out.
a proposal
We
you
can at
put
least get it to
together?
you.
Yeah.
We can at least get it to you.
Look at it. You guys have this.
Yeah.
Do they, was there, or what do you want to do with that? Because this is what Tracy was showing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we got her here to explain that. I don't know.
Yeah, it may be
Yeah.
more
We'll-
confusing.
we'll-
Yeah.
I have a bunch.
We'll be here next week.
Make it, grievance fairly, okay. There you go. So you have level 1. Going to the principal,
Correct.
and level 2.
Unless it's the principal.
On the definition of aggrieved person,
Mhm.
persons or the association making the complaint,
Mhm.
and then just in the language, I'm just trying to understand this. Within 20 days of an aggrieved person becoming aware of a grievance.
Mhm.
Didn't agree-
That's like the association, we may not be aware of it the first week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
It may take somebody 3 weeks to get hold of us or get hold of our grievance committee to even find the courage sometimes to come forward.
There's 20 calendar days.
Well, and you might,
Yes.
you might have
No,
something.
work days.
You might have something
Yeah,
happen.
everything.
Something may happen, you don't
days,
know.
Working days.
You don't know it happened until later.
Mhm.
Did you say work days, Kathy?
Yeah, it says days, it's working days. Yeah.
Okay, so level 2 is superintendent. Level 2.
Now, and you know this is coming, that arbitration. I mean, I would expect the Board of Education to support their administration. You hire them to evaluate the teachers. I would expect that you would, quote, have their back. And that's
Talking to
why.
me personally or the board?
No, the
'Cause I don't
board.
know that.
No, the board. I'm not
I think
talking.
I would refute that argument,
Yeah,
so.
the board, because you hire the administration, and I would expect that you would support their decision. And that's why we have arbitration, so it's someone outside of the issue, outside of the entity, that will be fair and impartial and hear both sides, and both of us are bound to it. So if they decide on your favor, the board's
We're bound to
favor,
it.
the teacher is bound to it.
Arbitration is
Who,
bad.
Kathy, had the electors put in charge of running the school district? Board of Education. Not an arbitrator from Wichita or Topeka or Kansas City.
But if you're talking about, I feel like my contract's been violated, what is,
Well, the employer's the Board of Education. They ought to make that decision, not somebody from somewhere else.
but the contract is a legal contract between the two,
Still
between the
have-
board.
Wait, what's the
and the
labor,
individual.
what are the labor laws?
You'd still go to court,
I thought you
right,
could
Bill?
go to
You
arbitration.
still have an option of filing an action in district court.
Wouldn't it be less expensive for you to just go to arbitration?
Not necessarily.
No, because
Arbitration is not inexpensive.
it's very
It's
expensive.
time consuming, and it's not very rewarding when we're done, when you're done.
So the major changes you've made here is we're taking out the Labor Management Committee, correct? That step is taken
The
out?
decision of the Labor Management Committee
Well, and I
in
think,
arbitration.
I would say that, when we put the Labor Management Committee in years ago, that was added as another step, and that was when we did do interest-based bargaining, and we had a very constructive and I think we worked together a lot, on things like that. It was a very constructive relationship, and we used interest-based bargaining, so I think we did a good job of working together. I think our Labor Management Committee is not as effective as it used to be. So, I don't know that it is, that's something we could certainly look at. The binding arbitration is certainly not something that we're going to easily just say, go ahead and take out, because, if we have binding arbitration, that is the right for that teacher to have a fair, impartial person weigh in. This is what we think, this is what the board thinks, and then a third party, impartial third party weighs in, and that should be where the truth comes out. I don't see any harm in that.
How was arbitration paid for?
Well, we pay for our part, and you pay for your part, and it should not be very
Said
expensive.
otherwise, it'd be
We,
split between the parties.
we can certainly look into the cost of that, but it shouldn't be,
But everybody's going to have the cost of their lawyers, and then they're going to have the cost of the arbitrator. You go to court, you don't have the cost of the.
The arbitrators are free.
arbitrators, we have arbitrators we can use that are not expensive. These aren't hearing officers.
Aren't they free?
They're
Yeah.
not free.
They're not free, the ones
There's
from
some
Wichita?
arbitrators.
I'd be amazed if they're free.
But we'll look into it, we'll find out, because I think they're, I know.
What did it
but-
cost us last year?
We
didn't have an
get to
arbitration.
arbitration.
No.
That was what, about 8,000?
But I think that it depends on how you figure the cost.
So the
We're just looking at our attorney fees.
8,000
You paid 8,000 in attorney fees for something that didn't even go to,
arbitration?
it didn't even go to a due process?
What's that?
You're confusing the due process.
Due process.
Oh.
Due process.
We haven't had an arbitration.
No, we haven't since I've.
We've only had one, and that was the counseling issue, years ago.
pre-me,
years
I
ago.
think.
Well, we had an agreement last year.
But we didn't have arbitration. We resolved that ourselves. That shouldn't have been any cost, except for your own. I mean, you're all just,
Well, that's what I'm saying, but our cost is our, whether it's a
it's your,
shared cost or not, it's our cost.
well, I mean, it's just your,
Time.
I mean, with your
But-
time.
but our
People are
lawyer-
already on
Our lawyer
staff.
bills by the hour.
What's that?
Our lawyer bills by the hour.
And this grievance procedure doesn't change?
I
any of
don't
that?
recall that we
No.
we didn't go to a hearing.
It-
We did the
it's-
Labor Management Committee.
But you still have to, I mean, you don't wait until you're ready for that to get your lawyer involved. I mean, those that want to spend more than they should do. I mean, I wouldn't,
So then arbitration is important because
It's our-
of a,
Fair and partial.
Because you don't think.
because the Board of Education is not fair and partial.
No, what I'm saying is, you hire your administrators to evaluate the teachers and to handle issues with the teachers. I would, as a taxpayer, expect you to support your administrators.
Over any other employee in the district?
More so,
Isn't every teacher an employee under us? I mean,
well, we
don't
only
say
have
direct
one, but,
employee.
Yeah.
but the problem with that though is if the policy says in which how we're going to decide this, and we're going to follow it based on that, so you can either say, well, we don't really care what the policy is, we don't care what the rule is we're supposed to follow or the policy or whatever, we're going to throw that out, and the board isn't smart enough to figure out that they can read a policy that says, here's how this is supposed to happen, and they can't separate their loyalty or alliance to the superintendent from the rule. I mean, that's not giving the board much credit.
Boards change.
They
And
do,
so
every
the
year.
binding arbitration does protect everybody from unfairness on either side.
Maybe.
So I think that it's,
Depends who your arbitrator is.
well, but we're both bound by it.
Well, sure
You
we
know,
are, but if
yeah.
we get one that's bad for us, or you get one that's bad for you,
Well, but
they
we're
can make
willing-
bad decisions too.
Right. But well, if we make our case, then.
But if
I-
you go to the board under our plan, and you don't like the ruling, you can still go to court.
Well,
Under
you
your
could-
plan, if we don't like the arbitrator's ruling, we're done and it's over with.
I think you could probably still appeal in
No,
court.
not if it's binding arbitration, you
No.
can't.
I don't think so.
I don't think you could do it.
Kathy right today, she thought you could.
Really?
Yeah. I asked her
It
about
does.
that.
You know, it's like getting falsely imprisoned and never being able to DNA clears you and you can't come back and sue the
20 years after
sue
the
the
fact.
state. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying our administrators are poor administrators or
I know.
anything like that, because,
Or
they
future-
change too.
Future ones. so.
They change too.
Right.
Oh.
And I think when we go to arbitration, don't we both agree on the arbitrator? You don't just, one side gets a pick
Depends on how
at
your language is set. Usually
Right.
you both agree, or
you. Sure.
somebody appointed by the American Arbitration System,
Mhm.
which is a mistake. Everything. And they get somebody from St. Louis, it costs a lot of money, and it's, my experience with arbitrators from the American Arbitration Association is not good. I would think if we wanted arbitration, it would be somebody off the state Board of Education list,
And
maybe.
they
Not through the American Arbitration Association.
have arbitrators here in town.
I don't
Through the
know.
college.
There are.
Through the college?
None I'm aware of.
There used to be.
Yeah.
There used to be.
Wichita?
Used to be some at the university, wasn't there?
There were?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're retired.
Okay. Well, that's my what to do. Okay. Anything else?
I would think the arbitrator would be a big fight. I mean, just so
A
you know,
what?
I think it's a big issue that we would not be willing to give on easily.
Yeah, you definitely would want somebody attached to the town or the community.
think so.
On who your arbitrator is?
No, just the binding arbitration clause. I mean, I think that's,
Well, it's in the contract now.
I understand that.
Okay.
But I think it's
So-
a big issue for us. I mean, it's just,
We have big issues too.
I know, and
So-
we're willing to listen, so.
Bill? Can we go back to that maintenance of standards?
Thank you guys for compiling
Yes,
your
thank you.
proposal.
Thanks for being
Okay.
receptive.
I said, are we meeting next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday.
And you can't be here or you can be here? You don't?
Wednesday or-
You cannot be?
You will not. Tuesday.
We were gonna meet at 5:30 because Josh was gonna be here, but since he cannot be here, can we go ahead and meet at 5?
I thought we already agreed to meet at 5.
I thought we did last week, we kind of talked about that. Well, we,
It's
That's what I said, that I would not be here.
we were meeting at
It
5:30.
was 5:30.
We were meeting at 5:30 to accommodate Mr. Waddell, and because he is going to be out of town, can we go ahead and meet at 5? I would prefer that if that's,
I just think, I mean, for me, like, it's very, I mean, I work till 5 at a minimum, and today I'm gonna go back, and I might be there till late, and
So you
so
wanna meet at
I
5:30?
had clients that walked out of my door at about 10 till, and that's why I didn't get here till
If at all
so
possible,
it's-
that would definitely help me on the next one,
Okay.
because that's what I was planning, if it's
5:30.
I
possible.
mean, if we've already set them at 5, I'll make them
Yeah.
work,
Well,
but
no,
those
I
that
think
are,
5:30 was an agreed upon time.
okay, it was. Okay,
Is
and
that
then,
our last one we scheduled?
We will.
No, we
No, it's
skipped
Yeah.
a week
several
because
more
of finals.
Oh, we skipped the 12th, but then it's next Tuesday.
Now, I
and then
believe
have
the one
a-
on the 26th
26th
is 5, and so is the one on the 20th.
if
You
we
have-
set them
the
for 5,
20th
I'm all right
and the
leaving. I just
26th,
would
okay.
do you have a
like to switch
schedule
them to
of
5
other
if they're at
things?
5:30.
Do you have a schedule of other things you wish to address?
Next week.
Because you gave us a list of things you wanted to address today.
Our goal is to go through, and we're going to work on those other, on that list that we presented you. We're going to try to get a lot of these together in this format like this, so hopefully here within the next week or so, we can get you all of that.
But do
We'll
you
get
know
as many
which,
as we can for the next one.
Do you know which
you
ones?
know which
next
ones
week?
you want to talk about next week?
We were really trying to get these hammered out, I'll be honest.
I don't think so, and if you guys are ready to talk
Yeah,
about
if you guys
these,
have
then
ones,
we
I mean,
can.
I'm-
Right,
Hit those.
and
I don't
I
know,
actually sent
the
out
sick
an
leave.
email to those that were on the committee to
See
try
if
to
they still wanna
formulate
be.
a time to be able
Okay.
to get together. as
Well,
soon
and I
as
don't think
possible.
we're going to hold you to, that you've got to be ready next
Oh, I
week,
know.
but if you are, we can do it, if not.
And that's kind of, I think, how I tried to express it in my email.
So what, I didn't have anything on the calendar. What were the other dates then?
We've got the
20th and
till June
26th.
30th scheduled.
We're skipping the 12th
I have the 20th.
and the 26th.
I don't have the 26th. What did we
Yeah,
say
there's
on
5 to 7.
26th is scheduled for the 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
At 5? Okay.
I don't believe I sent out a
The
request.
second is 5 o'clock.
Yeah, the 2nd's 5 o'clock, the 9th was 5 o'clock, the 16th was 5 o'clock, 23rd and 30th.
Wait,
All at 5.
Those were all.
May
I think
26th.
everything's 5, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Other than,
I'm the only one I got to say.
She hasn't
Just the
sent
one I
it.
think.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's every Tuesday.
I had known that it was agreed upon that that was too far out to schedule.
Yeah.
Also two.
For what?
I think we stopped at the 26th to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't
what
think
it
she
was.
sent out, I think we just.
Yeah,
had
yeah.
We scheduled it.
And,
Because, like I said, you know, I know my father's having some tests run, and I may be gone in June. It depends on how
as
those
we
come
get
out.
a little bit closer to that, are you guys receptive to possibly having one or two of those that would be 5:30 before we send them out and doing that? If
The
we
June?
kind of, I'm not saying any ones in particular, but I know since we talked about just going through and doing
June.
some at 5 and some at 5:30.
June's not a problem.
Okay.
The week of June 2nd.
And I'm not saying we have to
I'm
schedule them
going
now, I'm just,
Yeah.
She's gone all week, the first week of June.
The first week in June I'm gone.
June it is then.
June,
Does anybody want another morning one starting at the summer?
You guys work, right? I mean, they wouldn't be able to come.
yeah.
Actually, I can.
I mean, I'm working, but I
7 to
can
about
dictate
8:30
my
is
own
good for
time
me.
like
I don't
that.
care when it is, but I can usually make that, unless I'm out of town.
I could do early like that.
Yeah, if you did it early.
I could do early like that if people wanted to do it.
So is the weekend of June 2nd then out?
I'm
I
gone.
guess, do we have to?
We initially had it for the 2nd.
I don't know how many people we have to have present on our,
I'd say let's leave it, and we can always cancel it later, but I thought we scheduled every Tuesday at 5 o'clock after finals, was my understanding. till whatever that last day of the month was.
So go ahead and send them on.
Yeah,
30th.
Tuesday in June, 5 to 7.
I'll be going.
Would you consider 5:15 to 7:15? That would
I'd
give you
rather go
15 more
5:20
minutes to get here.
7:20.
Well, I said that, if I set them at 5, I'll make them work, but it's, I mean,
Well, I mean, during
I'll
the
be
summer, 5:15 to 7:15, that'd give you a cushion of 15 minutes.
yeah, usually that, I'll try and make 5 work, but, and if it can't, they can start without me.
We send everything out again to everybody, so we're all on the same page there. Yeah, it'd be good.
Just write it 5:30 or 5:15, just to make sure I'm sure.
You said 5 to 7.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, do we need